It was 3 students on a summer trip to Mexico, but what it eventually led to, no one in their wildest dreams could have imagined.
Not even our founder, George Verwer.
In the midst of the social and political revolution of the 60s, a group of young students started their own revolution, a spiritual revolution of love. Young and inexperienced, they were spurred on by a deep conviction that everybody should have the opportunity to receive the gospel at least once. In an era where missionaries traditionally were of a certain skin colour, had a seminary degree, and made a lifelong commitment, George and his small team called out those who loved Jesus to start with giving a summer, believing that learning would happen as they got involved. Hundreds, then thousands joined within a few years. 25 million pieces of Christian literature were distributed across Europe in the first 2 summers. A spiritual revolution was taking place, and it had attitude. No place too hard, no people too far, no idea too crazy, no dream too big, and failure was not final. Creative thinking flourished. OM teams far and wide came up with innovative ways of reaching people with the gospel. During the Cold War, the communist world was hard to penetrate, but OM teams found a way. By retrofitting vans, hundreds of tons of gospel literature were smuggled in behind the Iron Curtain. India was thousands of miles away from Europe, but that did not stop us. OM teams of young, eager Christians drove overland from Europe to India with trucks packed with Christian literature. Within 3 years, 30 million pieces of literature had been handed out. The urgency of the task continued to push us to consider creative approaches. In the 70s, George decided we needed a ship to travel to the world's port cities and towns.
Many in the Christian world thought we'd gone crazy.
Today, OM Ships is one of OM's best-known ministries and has distributed over 100 million pieces of literature in over 150 countries and territories and welcomed over 44 million visitors on board its 4 ships. In the 1980s, again, change was needed. George sent out a tape to OM leaders suggesting a major change in OM's approach to finance. Not to just believe in God for, but to encourage financial supporters. In the midst of the name it and claim it movement, OM needed a financial policy which combined faith with common sense. The 90s brought one of the biggest shifts in strategy in OM's history. The First Gulf War created a massive humanitarian crisis among the Kurdish people. George, along with the other leaders, believed OM should respond to these great physical needs. So they did.
And our relief and development efforts began.
We learned to keep on keeping on as we innovated and adapted to the changing world around us.
Rapid growth meant we also needed to turn our attention internally. More emphasis was placed on discipling our missionaries and equipping them for long-term service.
But the vision never wavered. The least reached remained our focus.
In the early 2000s, OM responded to the plight of the Dalit people, the untouchables of India, by bringing to them health services and education, as well as the good news of Jesus Christ. And in Eastern Europe, during the Kosovo War, OM was helping to plant churches and train national pastors to lead them, something we had never done before. In 2013, OM appointed its first non-Western director, and with it embraced the shift in world missions towards the global south. We saw more missionaries being mobilised from historically receiving nations, such as Asia, Africa, Eastern Europe, and Latin America. Today, OMers come from over 110 different countries.
We are truly a global community of Jesus followers.
Could those 3 students handing out gospel tracts during the summer of 1957 ever have imagined that today more than 200,000 people from over 100 nations have followed in their footsteps, leading to more than 1 billion people being touched by the gospel through the ministry of OM?
We believe that it is God's mission to transform lives and communities as He reconciles the world to Himself. We have the privilege of joining with Him in this mission. We want to see vibrant communities of Jesus followers in places where people have yet to hear the gospel even once. Will you join us?